the scene of my tale. When I started out, I got this, my boss, the VP of research, came over and said, we need a strategy on supporting societal impact of research. So that's your job for the next few years, on top of 2 other things that I was doing full time. And first thing you need to know, there was no top-down driver. We didn't have REF, we didn't have any kind of research assessment from government. We could do whatever we wanted if we assessed our research. For education, many, many different regulations, rules and procedures. Research, nothing. We didn't really have impact paragraphs or impact statements in funding, except maybe for EU funding, where you need to be very specific about your impact, and they even describe what kind of impact they're expecting from your project, which is the other way around for National Science Foundation. So I started, and I got this institutional policy plan approved, and I must say it took 2 years just to write it, because it was written within 1 year. That wasn't the problem. But then, policy changed, leadership changed, and it wasn't such a good time to put forward a new policy. So I waited, but in 2015 it got approved by the Board of Governors, and even before it got approved, my boss told me that you won't be getting any funding and you won't be getting any staff. So team of 1, trying to implement a institutional policy plan. It might have been a policy plan, it had actions in there, but there were more suggestions of things we could do. We're a very decentralized university, which means we've got all these little kingdoms, and we've got a system that thrives on competition between the kingdoms. So allocation of funding, allocation of staff, it's all about who's the biggest, who's the smartest, who's the cleverest, and who has all the knowledge. Knowledge is power within a decentralized university. So getting this across an institution of about 7,000 researchers, you can see a team of 1, maybe not. Flanders loves metrics. We love our metrics, we love our indicators, we love our output-driven model. We love counting beans, and so we go metric crazy. So that was the context I was working in. And if you know about impact, you know metrics aren't going to cut it, right? So that's another thing. You can feel the woe coming, right? After 2 years of trying to get some kind of foothold and finding, I think, fellow victims, leadership changed. A new vice-chancellor who ran on the importance of impact, incentivizing impact, pathways to impact. So I thought, yay, I've won the big ticket. No, he just ran on it. When I had a meeting with him, he was very single-minded about what's impact, namely something that is an impact, media attention. Yeah. And he was also very much into, just give me one example that we as a university have impact. Give me the stories, I will tell them for you. Yes. And then another thing, something that's really important in our policy unit, we care about good HR for researchers. We think good HR for researchers, good career tracks, good mental well-being is the heart and soul of good research policy. And something like impact really ties in with mental well-being. We did a study at all the Flemish universities with junior researchers. 1 in 3 has an elevated risk for mental issues. That's not good news. That's detrimental. So we're creating this whole generation of researchers that's unhappy. And so that was part of my tale as well. So I thought, I'm an optimistic person by nature. I'm still going to go forward and press ahead with elements on the level of policy, elements on the level of people and platforms. And of course, there's a tortoise that I promised on Twitter. This is going to take some time. So I was going to focus on those people, you know, this curve you have, this graph. I'm going to focus on the people on top of the graph that are willing to go that way and be early adopters and just help my plan to take foothold. Policy. What I did was I started cherry picking from the policy plan. I looked for the things that I could easily manage and not the big things that would take me another 10 years to implement. And the first thing we did was try and get across what is impact and show them that there are many pathways to impact. So impact is the effect. It's not all the activities you do. That's not the impact. And so what I did was try and get across in every kind of document, changing the wordings, changing the semantics so that everyone understood what impact is and what kind of pathways are available to them. And that it's not a one-trick pony, and you don't have to go for the unicorns of impact. It can be very localized, just change one person's life, that's impact as well. What we did on a more broader level was change the way that we looked at assessing research. So we looked into the DORA principles, so the San Francisco Declaration on Research Assessment. We didn't sign it as an institution. So it's all about using metrics and indicators in a responsible way. We didn't sign the DORA Declaration, but we did change our entire approach to research assessment. Why didn't we sign it? Because we're still within Flanders, within a system that uses quite a lot of indicators, and we would be lying if we signed the declaration. And we brought in this element of impact case studies, storytelling, other ways of assessing impact of research. Another big thing that happened just recently is we changed the entire career progression model for our professors. And impact is now incentivized, it's rewarded. The pathways to impact are rewarded. Professors can actually choose to do public engagement as part of their 5-year plan, and they will not be, punished for choosing that career path. And we tied in impact to the idea of open science. It's about sharing, it's about building upon knowledge. And if you start sharing within your own peer community, the step towards sharing with your stakeholders and beneficiaries is smaller. And we tied it in with interdisciplinarity. So we try to convince researchers through a research approach rather than it's public money and you need to do this. But of course, policy only works when people get along. And what we did is we invested quite heavily through our own funding in knowledge brokers, in people actually managing, setting up, supporting the pathways to impact, research managers within certain topics. And so we now have a call open for, we already have 4 of these consortia with a knowledge broker. We started out with the social sciences and humanities because we thought they needed an extra boost. And so we had that as an experiment, and we have 4 of these centers already. And now the call is open to add another 6. And the call is very much about 50% of the proposal is about impact. It's what is your impact plan? Have you looked into your stakeholders? And the other element is the interdisciplinarity. Who are you going to be working with to create this impact? And we're bringing in external stakeholders to judge these proposals, which is something we haven't done before at our university. It has always been academics looking at proposals from other academics. This time we're having society, industry being represented in the evaluation. What I did was become part of this international conversation about impact. We're not reinventing the wheel in Belgium. These things are happening all across the planet. And what I did at the university was invest in a decentralized community of practice. Because I'm just a team of 1, I needed to invest in ambassadors within schools. And I trained the trainer principle. So what I do is I train all these knowledge brokers into pathways of impact, supporting impact, and so on. And they then spread the word across their own teams. So essentially building up impact literacy, not just among our researchers themselves, but also administrators, grant proposers, and so on. And take it back to the core of what is a university. It should be part of society. It's about, why are you a researcher? Because you wanted to change the world. And that will help us to reconnect with our mental well-being as researchers, because we're doing something that we actually care about and that the world cares about. It sounds very soft, but it's something that researchers really need. So the final thing was then invest in infrastructure. Policy and people is all good and well, but you need infrastructure. So I'm also project manager on building our own research information system. So making all these impacts and impact pathways visible, giving them a place where they can actually put in all the information and reuse it for their CVs and so on. We brought in Altmetric to show that there's other ways of looking at attention and reach. And we invested very heavily in a number of very prioritized outreach platforms, such as a collaboration with the public library, where there's now a number of research groups just being housed. That's their place where they live and work, doing extensive SciComm events, of course, but also setting up a university museum, not just as a museum where you can look at the collection, no, as a hub, a co-creative place to connect with society. And another thing we did was adapt our communication, not just talk about how wonderful we're doing in rankings and so on, and how many new ERC projects that we're gaining, but actually talk about why is science important? What does this mean for you as a citizen? That was about it. If you have questions, you can always contact me. It's a long road, and I'm still traveling it, and it'll probably take another 10 years, but I'm remaining optimistic. Thank you.